And that's what this was. This was a very powerful presence, whatever this thing was. So at first I was thinking maybe this is a probe. This is some sort of transdimensional technology or something that's floating around here. But after I felt that, I'm like, no, this is not a thing. This is an entity, whatever this is. I feel it. I literally felt its presence floating there. And then I felt it moving. And I felt it coming right toward me. It was still up in the sky, but I felt it coming toward me, and I started backing up, and I said to the corporal, I'm like, it's coming toward me. Don't ask me how I know. I feel it coming toward me. And he started freaking out, and he's backing up, getting his distance from me. So if the thing decides to blow me up or something, he's gone. And I felt it coming toward me, and I I pointed up, and I said, I feel it. I feel it. I feel it. And I'm pointing where I feel it going, right? I do a complete 180. The thing went right over my head. I mean, I felt like this staticky energy just go right over my head, even though I'm not seeing it. And its presence is just so profound. I turn around and I'm looking in the trees, and I said, I don't know how I know this, but the next time this thing flashes, it's going to flash right there. And as soon as I pointed and said the word there, it flashed like it was on cue, exactly where I pointed. So that wasn't language. It wasn't, talking to me or anything like that in English, but it communicated its GPS coordinates to me. It let me know it was alive. It let me know where it was at. And to a certain extent, I think it kind of let me know that it somewhat knew what I was saying because it waited till I said the word there, right when I pointed, and flashed on cue perfectly. Now, that could have been a coincidence, but putting the other facts together, maybe not. I did feel like this thing was intelligent, and it probably had the ability to maybe understand me somewhat. And it was a powerful presence. So I was ecstatic. I was flipping out. I'm like, dude, did you see that? Did you see that? The thing flashed where I pointed, and it flashed when I said the word there. And I'm just making a big thing out of this. And then my team leader he's just catatonic at that point. He just wasn't saying anything. He just sort of sat there, And I'm just going on and on and on about this thing, right? And it didn't do anything like ultra fantastic, like take the form of a human or have a conversation with me or take me off on this fantastic journey to another plane of existence. No, none of that Hollywood stuff. It did what I basically just said. Then it proceeded to flash on and off, and it did a complete 360 around our perimeter, as if taking note of all the different angles of our entire area from all sides, like a probe would do, or somebody just really checking you out, you know. And then it proceeded to go down this jungle trail, and there were two other positions down in the jungle, and it did a circle around each of those and then went back off into the jungle. So how do I know that it went to these two other positions? The next day I brought it up. We were all together, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to address the elephant in the room at the risk of, bringing up a taboo subject that y'all could just be totally content to never mention ever existed.
Well, they
Or ever,
already labeled you the weird guy, right? So
or
why not?
just yeah, okay. Now that label, we're gonna go print this in the New York Times or something, right? But at this point, I didn't care because I'm like, I got to experience what it was like to be James T. Kirk, right? I'm so high on life that this incident was just like the best of the best, right? And then so my corporal, he looked at me and he said, I think you summoned it. And everybody started laughing, just her cackling and stuff. Yeah, he summoned it. He's a warlock, all this other crap, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, what's harder to conceive of? What I saw in the jungle or your guys' reaction to it? Don't you understand what we saw isn't supposed to exist? I mean, a scientist would be scratching their head over that. How does that exist? But the more I talked, the more they just, cackled and made fun of me. But I did get out of them that yes, it did go around the other two perimeters. And one guy was like saying, "Oh yeah, maybe it was a firefly," and I'm like, "Yeah, a firefly the size of a soccer ball." I think that's harder to believe.
Yeah, that gets into our cryptid territory at that point, and that would be equally insanely cool to see. So,
Yeah. Of course, I was into Dungeons and Dragons back then too. I was a dungeon master for a couple years, and because those books are sort of paranormally, and I knew the monster manuals, I knew deities and demigods, and all these legends and folklore. Gary Gygax, the author, he was a big buff on mythology and stuff. So
yep.
I read about the Will o' the Wisp. So very closely matches what I saw. This
That's a good
glowing ball of
point.
light. Yeah.
I didn't even put that together until you said it. But actually, the first episode of this show, I was solo. It was a week before I had my neck surgery. That's been well documented in our progress, and I go deep into a Willow, the
Well
Wisp,
documented.
hmm They
story
try
on
to
there.
stimulate your curiosity and you get you to follow them, and then what do? You fall into some pit. So
Yeah,
that's probably some kind of demon thing.
and
But
well, it's adjacent to Lantern Men, and we actually. So I live in Pennsylvania, and I'm about 40 minutes away from Johnstown, and just outside of Johnstown, there's a town called Boswell, and right now it is vibrant with this kind of activity. I mean, there's videos of lantern men and lights like the willow that are just kind of
Mhm.
going. And there's a dam that was man-made, and it had certain. I didn't want to get into them because of the age of the victims, but there were a couple of suspicious deaths that had occurred around that same area. So um,
General the
that,
consensus is they're not good.
yeah,
Uh, However, the behavior of this one seemed more like a curious animal, in my opinion. It just checked us out, and I honestly think it could have killed me. And I have seen episodes of shows where something similar happened, and it did kill people. Or there was this one incident though, where a guy went into his barn. He was lured into his barn by one of these things, and he saw this glowing ball of light, and then it blew up, and all the animals in the barn died, but he was alive.
oh
So that
wow,
was odd.
yeah, that's trippy.
Yeah. But this
Uh,
thing was definitely, I felt it was alive. It was sentient. It kind of communicated with me. And it was just sort of like, just checking you out. All right, I'm going to go check these guys out now. And off it went. So, I mean, maybe if I'd have followed it would have done something bad. But I don't know. I
I,
was in the military. I couldn't move. This was my post, So,
yeah, it heard your declaration of peace as well, and that could
mhm.
have maybe led it to the way it acted in that
Mellowed out.
situation. Yeah,
Instead of "Be gone, beast," or
You should
shoot
you
my
should have
weapon at
you
it.
should have shot it. Yeah, you should have shot it.
Oh, that's how you're gonna be, huh? Not so friendly you are. Psst,
right.
like I'm gonna shoot a ball of energy. Not too brilliant. So that experience was like one of the most amazing ones because there was another guy there with me when it happened, and it communicated with me and stuff. But I had a lot of other stuff happen to me. I mean, uh, and that's the content of some of my books. I put a couple of my stories in one of my books called The Paranormal Christian. Um, um, Really bizarre stories. For example, when I did self hypnosis uh, back in my experimental phase, uh, and I thought I went to sleep, and I had this dream where um, I was at this canal bank where I used to play when I was a kid. I was only like 5, 6 years old. Me and my brother used to go to this place. It was actually a dangerous place. It was this big sand dune type things, but there was a canal right there, and it was a dam. Um, don't fall into the dam because if you fall there was a place where the water could suck you down and basically kill you. And me and my brother knew not to get too close to that area, but we would go and run off and jump off of these cliffs. The sand dunes were these cliffs like 30 feet high, and we could run as fast as we could and just leap and fly through the air. And then when we would land, it would be somewhere near the bottom, but there would always be this nice sand pack. So it was basically like flying. And so we had all these dangerous games. Honestly, I could think of 24 times where I should be dead. You know, kid born in 1970, most of them, or a lot of them anyway. You know, we weren't seatbelt wearing kids. We rode in the back of the pickup truck. You know, we didn't have cell phones to call 911. You know, and I lived in the inner city in Fresno for part of that. I was almost run down by a maniac in his El Camino once. Just riding my bike. I'm a little kid. The guy literally tried to run me down. So I've had all these near-death experiences, and you know, part of it was just being a propensity, just free-range farm kid living there in Madera, and just we did dangerous stuff all the time. So we're there all playing in this dam area, and it was a place I used to play. So years later, I'm experimenting with self-hypnosis and past life regression and all this stuff, right? And this is a book I read, Past Lives, Future Lives. And I'm like, oh, yeah, there's probably something to that. I want to see what my past life was. And so you make your own transcript according to the book. And because you're listening to yourself when you're done, you automatically trust yourself, and you can inject whatever you want into the transcript to let you know that, hey, this is me. You know, I'm your friend. I am my own friend. And I just want to remember something, right? So I thought, well, harmless enough. What could happen? So I'm listening to the thing, and then I pass out. I go to sleep. And I have a dream. And I'm back again at that canal, except I see myself, right? As a kid playing there. And I'm sort of floating like an observer. And, you know, okay, dreams are like that. Sometimes you're an observer watching yourself, right? But I approach myself, and so part of the dream is I'm falling into that canal and getting sucked down and drowning to death, right? And then I flash to another scene and I see myself, right? And I float toward myself, and I'm like trying to communicate, but little me is not hearing. And so I reach out and grab me, and I get sucked up in me, and I wake up. And then I hear my recording say, and now you're, 10, now you're awake. And I'm like, holy cow, it worked. I just listened to my recording. And if you've done self-hypnosis, they're horribly boring on purpose. They're supposed to make you just zone out, right? And I thought I went to sleep, but I hypnotized myself, and I had that dream, and I snapped out of it on cue when I said, 10, you're awake. And I couldn't know what to think. I'm like, what was that? Okay, I dreamed that I drowned at that canal I used to play at, but I know I didn't drown. And then I started thinking, wait a minute. I remember somebody that did drown there. There was a place I used to get babysit when I was a kid. And there was a guy there in his 20s, and I barely remembered him, but he was not a good character. That family was not very good character. My mom shouldn't have let me be watched, babysat over there. It was bad. But I remember this guy used to, he had this muscle car, and he'd pour gasoline on the tires and peel out, and so his tires would catch on fire when he was peeling out down the road and stuff. And so I remembered the guy, but I do also remember vaguely that he drowned in that canal messing around, and he drowned about the time that I was 5, or 5, 6, the same age that I used to play in that place. So I put 2 and 2 together that, holy cow, maybe I was that guy, and I drowned. And then I saw me, but wait a minute, how can I be that guy? I remember that guy. I can't be a reincarnation of him. I remember him. And then I concluded, wait a second, maybe that guy possessed me. Holy cow. Then I started thinking, wait a minute, my favorite color used to be dark blue. Then it suddenly changed to green. And I like to wear these grungy clothes. My personality kind of changed a little bit when I was a kid, too. Certain things that I didn't like, I started liking. What the heck's going on around here? And I went over and I looked in the mirror. And as I was looking in the mirror, I felt like part of my conscious was going, holy crap, what did I do? I possessed a poor little kid. And I've been stuck here all this time, screwing this kid's life up. And I could sense I had those thoughts in my head and my own at the same time. And I suddenly became like, dude, you have to get out of me now.
Is this right around the time where you kind of stopped how you described living your worldly life and then kind of...
No. I still continued on. A lot of that residual stuck with me for another year.
But close. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we could call that residual. That's kind of insane.
But
maybe
I honestly kind of think that this dude's spirit. Now that's not a typical Christian thing either. Christians usually think black and white. You're dead, heaven, hell, right? No, I don't think it's that cut and dry. I think there's a lot of gray area. There's certain things that, a Christian will tell you that, and then you ask him, okay, how does a person get possessed? And it's like, well, that's by a demon. That's different. Okay, a demon. You know what a demon is? A demon, if you look at the actual word in Hebrew, is a Nephilim ghost, right? Raphaim. That translates as shades and spirits, and it also translates as giants. And there's a reason why we depict demons with horns and all these part human, part animal or hybrid animal creatures. It's because you look in Enoch and you look in Jasher, you see that the Nephilim actually crossed with animals too. Not Nephilim, but fallen angels, they crossed with animals. They did funky stuff. And even in like Greek mythology and stuff, those beings could shape change into an animal and then reproduce with it. And then the offspring were these weird hybrids that were powerful. They had supernatural abilities. So honestly think Sasquatch is a Nephilim.
I was going to ask you that.
I've heard that. I have heard that.
That's catching on.
How do you think they're transdimensional? They could pop in and out. I have the craziest Sasquatch story from a friend of mine, but there have been instances where these Sasquatch, they're like standing right next to you. The smell comes and goes. You could smell this thing. But how could something that freaky large be right next to you and you not see it? And my friend and a friend of mine and his buddies, they were actually hunting one when they were kids during a camping trip where they were hunting. And the thing took their buck. And they were pissed. Guys, the thing took my buck. I was looking through the scope and I saw this big, huge thing grab a 12-point buck with one arm, throw it over his shoulder and step into the bushes and vanish. And the friends, they were going to go get it. And he was back on the other ridge looking through his scope, guiding him to it. And this thing was like literally like 10 feet away from him. And it did that and they didn't see it. It disappeared with how much is a 12-point buck? That's like 750 pounds.
That's a big animal.
That's big. This thing just flopped it over his shoulder and disappeared, right? So they proceeded to hunt this thing. They smelled it, this horrible, wretched, skunky smell, and this messing with them the whole time. And they could not find it. They knew it was now around. And there were times where they were walking and they would say, okay, stop walking on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. And then they would hear a footstep. And that footstep was like right next to them. They're like, I heard it. But they can't see it. And the trees are too sparse. They can't hide in those areas where they heard it. And it's playing games with them all day as they're trying to hunt it. And then in the night, they were so scared. They went back to their camp. They had their food tied up in a tree. And this was in the Ozarks where this happened. Their food was in a net up in the tree. This thing climbed the tree, slashed the net, and took cans of beans and ripped them open like this. Ate them. Right. So how do you
Cold Steve Austin the beans?
How do you twist open a can of beans, right? So they're like, that's not a bear. That didn't have bite tooth marks in it or anything. These were ripped open. They were just terrified. And of course, the dad dropped them off, and he was going to come back and pick them up the next day. So they were stuck out there, and they couldn't go anywhere. So they created this big bonfire. And they're there taking shifts throughout the night. And around midnight, one guy has to go to the bathroom. He's got to go number 2. And of course, they've been scared all day, so he wasn't doing it. And he's like, there wasn't any activity, nothing going on for the past couple hours. So he thought, okay, it'll be safe. I'm just going to go do my business over there behind a tree. So he walks over behind a tree, puts his rifle next to him, which he had with him the whole time, just like, ready to shoot. Leans it against the tree, drops his drawers, goes down to drop a deuce, and right at the point of fecal exodus. So,
Oh, well, hold on. You didn't have to call it that. You could have called it
right at the point. He was
fecal exodus.
Yeah. He was like playing Slee Stack. They had those little half tails, right?
That's the name of the episode is Fecal Exodus.
Yeah, he was a Slee Stack at that point. And right, he's there. Suddenly, boom. This thing, it like materializes. Like it was there. He didn't see how it appeared, but suddenly it steps out and it's standing right in front of him. And it's like 12 feet tall. And it's just staring at him. So this thing has got a sense of humor even to do that to somebody. Oh, let's wait a couple of hours until he's taken a dump and he's completely helpless. And then I'm going to step out here and say hello. And of course, no problem if you crap your pants because they're already down, right? You're already in the process. Let me help this out. But okay, so the guy sees the thing and it's staring at him. And what does it do? It reaches down, grabs his rifle, snaps it like a twig, slams both halves down on the ground. Point made. You think you're going to hunt me? Idiot! This is my home. I could kill you anytime I want. That's the point it made. Just snap that rifle, and it also let him know, this thing is dangerous. I know it's dangerous. It could probably hurt me if you actually caught me off guard, but I'm not that stupid.
That's another thing that I think is interesting, is that so many of
fecal
these
exodus somewhere else.
Yeah, that's where
exactly.
That's his territory. That's where
the woods, but no, you don't belong here. This is my home.
So many of the sightings really harken on it's territorial, but it very well could have snapped your friends in half.
This one
was
a decent critter. This one was decent. And that doesn't actually line up with what Nephilim are typically. But you know what? The Nephilim in Noah's day, they were all bad. Okay? We can pretty much conclude that. But let's say maybe generation after generation, and these are crossing with each other now. They're not half angelic anymore. They're actually Nephilim crossing with Nephilim, and the species is still managing to survive and keep their head down. And who knows? Maybe there's some out there that are just maybe on the neutral side, more like an animal. They're more like, you know what? I'm not going to kill them. That'll just invite a whole bunch of other people here, and then we like where we live. We don't want to create any more trouble for ourselves. Let's just make sure that they never come back, and we can keep this from escalating. I mean, I see them as highly intelligent. I mean, after that description, I would say that they put a lot of thought into it. This one probably had fun messing with them.
Right.
But it snapped that rifle like a twig and then stepped back off into the woods, and he was gone. And of course, this guy was losing it, crapping all over himself at that point, and scrambled back to the, camp. And he woke everybody up. And of course, they built up the bonfire and it stayed awake the rest of the night. It never came back, And then the next day they were like, okay, well, we'll mark this place off of our camping list and we're not hunting here again. As for that nice 12-point buck, well, sorry, we'll have to go without. So that whole story, I believe that is actually a Nephilim, and that the demons that people see those are the ghosts of these things, because it's the same word in Hebrew, Raphaim, giant, shades, and spirits. So my original question that spurred off all of that was, how is it possible for the ghost of a Nephilim, which is far more evil than human, according to Genesis chapter 6, they thought about evil continually always. How come that gets the latitude to wander around like a ghost and possess people? And the Bible has ample evidence that people can get possessed by demons. But a human spirit's not allowed. I mean, reconcile that. A human spirit that's not even as bad as a demon is not allowed to have any freedom whatsoever. But this much worse thing is allowed to roam about at free will. I don't think it's that black and white. I think that people can be possessed by a deceased person. It depends on if a portal got opened up. People can open portals by doing things like messing with Ouija boards or whatever. So it's people who create a gateway. And then, of course, cursed ground can do that. I think that a murder, for example, happening in a place can curse the ground and maybe thin the veil and allow openings. So, of course, Christians base their concept of, when you die, you go to hell, and, Lazarus and the rich man in the parable that Jesus said. But there's certain things about that parable when you dissect it that were like, okay, he couldn't go across the chasm to get to paradise, but does that mean he's not able to go back to, the realm of the living in any way, shape, or form, even if somebody's trying to summon him? I mean, I think that that's a possibility. And I also think there's a possibility that maybe your bones are connected, still some kind of residual connection to your spirit with your body, hence the reason why graveyards tend to be haunted. There's also that story in, I think it's 2 Kings, I'm not 100%, but that the people were carrying the dead body into the grave. They accidentally dropped the body and it rolled into Elijah's tomb, touched Elijah's dead body, and he resurrected from the dead, the dead body, the person that they took in there. Because there was still so much residual glory of God's power in Ezekiel's bones that the guy got resurrected. So there's a connection still to Ezekiel, or was it Ezekiel? Or yeah, I think it was Ezekiel's dead body that he touched. Those bones had residual power, glory still in them. So there was still a connection to Ezekiel and God through that corpse, through those bones. What if demons have the same thing, right? The demon died and those bones are like in the earth, and that would be a cursed place. So you see these shows about hauntings and stuff where there's the ground is bad, the place is bad, right? Maybe if you brought a bulldozer around there and you started digging around, you might find a Nephilim body under there, some bones. That's also my theory as to why museums have gotten rid of those bones. Did a huge research thing on giants and why don't we find any giant bones, right? There's plenty of archaeological documentation showing that they have found these giants all over the place. And yet when you go to the museum, they're not there. The archaeologists wrote down meticulously all the things that they found. Why would they write about something that they did not find? Especially something as audacious as giant bones. And yet, those bones, where are they? Well, think about it from the curator's perspective. Let's just say some archaeologist brings in, oh my gosh, look at this human skull. It's this big. This is outrageous. This will be, we'll get people visiting us for days, years. This will be a huge sensation. And the day they bring that thing in, bad stuff starts happening left and right in that museum. People getting sick, people seeing ghosts, poltergeist activity, stuff flying all over the place. I mean, those bones, holy crap, that's a demon. That is a demon associated with that thing. Get that out of here.
Yeah, I wouldn't want that next to my dinosaur bones.
Oh.
Yeah, we'd have a night at the museum type situation happening.
So there might be very well normal natural, logical explanation as to why they have systematically gotten rid of those bones. I've also heard that there is a possibility that certain high-level satanic orders might have wanted to get a hold of them for rituals and stuff. You got some of these billionaires like in the WEF, and some of them, they creepy dudes, Illuminati types, and not like that I get into a lot of that research and everything, but I've heard a few things. I mean, in the WEF, they're not nice people. I mean, they literally publish on their website that one of their main goals is to reduce the population of the earth by a couple of billion. That's maniacal, psychotic rage. And these people are billionaires, and they're pulling the strings of global affairs, right? And these people, some of them are into this weird, twisted stuff. And they might want to be like saying, hey, Smithsonian, give me all you got on that stuff. We want to like crush all those bones and make a relic with it, and have our rituals with it. Can you imagine all these Nephilim, like 1,000 Nephilim, crushed and molded into a single object, and then make that part of your satanic ritual, this thing that's got all of this satanic, demonic residual energy in it? Of course they would want that.
Yeah,
So that would be some explanation as to why these bones might be hard to find.
it's very Clive Barker-ish too. It's almost kind of scary that again, you just put something out there in the ether for me that I wasn't even considering, and now I'm going to just ponder that all night while I'm trying to.
Well, the
trying
Bible
to
gives
go
you
to
a
sleep.
concrete example of God's glory being in some bones. Maybe the opposite of that is also true. Maybe anti-glory, evil, the wretchedness of something can also be there in a residual form and somehow connected to the spirit. And in that, in turn, can open up a doorway, allowing these things here into this world. There's one thing the Bible's not very clear about, and that's how a person gets possessed. Other than, you live a disobedient life and you're doing all kind of crazy stuff. You're going to bad places, you're doing the bad things, maybe taking drugs and stuff like that. And you open the door, and when you get down that path of disobedience to God and rebellion to a major extent, you start opening up that demonic realm and you can become possessed. But that is a little easier to understand. But what about these instances in the Bible where you find kids that are possessed by demons and they're thrown into the fire? And before Jesus came, I think Satan had a lot more power in this world. So he was doing all kind of bad stuff. And then when Jesus came and the disciples came, they were casting demons out left and right. And what went hand in hand with exorcism? Healing. And you say them right together. He healed the sick. He cast out the evil spirits, right? There you go. You want to know where a lot of diseases come from? When these things possess you, their DNA doesn't quite mix with yours. And in the quantum level, you get viruses. Look what a virus is. It doesn't even make sense, even biologically.
Are you calling me out for having strep throat?
A virus doesn't make sense biologically. It destroys its host. It's what a demon does.
I'm possessed?
No. The funny thing is that there's a stigma when it comes to possession, right? But honestly, it should be treated like any sickness, because Jesus healed the sick and cast out evil spirits. And then some of this could be energy. What if it's not like a spirit in the traditional sense that we think? Maybe it's just residual energy in a place, and we're like sponges. Everywhere we go, we're soaking the stuff up. Some people soak up more than others. Some people kind of reflect it. Other people, they absorb it, and they need a detox. So, the good news is when you become a believer, you pray the blood of Jesus, you can clean this off all the time. And that even goes to the full-blown physical manifestation where you can be physically healed from a sickness or a disease or something, right? But the demonic component, the spiritual component of sickness, I think that that's a reality that we always deal with, but our science isn't quite there, at least in the public realm, public sector. Not to say that we don't have that kind of technology. I think we probably do, but covert government agencies are hoarding it and they don't want to let it out. From what I've read.
On top of that type of evil maniacal government stuff, there's also just a general willingness from the populace to just accept that things are the way that they are. And I think a lot of those things that are kept from us, comes from that discrepancy, and that if enough people stood up, fought for those types of that information, that eventually these super rich evildoers behind the government would have to answer.
You would think so. I've been following Raymond Greer, Dr. Raymond. Is it Raymond? No, Stephen Greer.
Yeah,
Are
the
you familiar with
Disclosure
him?
Project. Yep, very
Yeah.
familiar with Stephen Greer.
Yeah, I
Yep.
actually emailed him, and they replied back, and I told them, hey, I want to go report to Congress. I got, there's a lot of government officials that are probably freaking out because they get read into the file, then they realize ET life is real, and then that kind of throws their faith for a loop. They're like, how do I reconcile this? So I've taken my book, Christian UFOlogy, and I'm like, it makes perfect sense. It actually, I connected the dots. It makes perfect sense. I believe actually this more because it's in the Bible, and I found it in the Bible, than I do from even my own experiences of communicating with a ball of light. I see everything in the Bible, God talking about the angels, the realm of heaven, dissecting the meaning of the word, Shamaim and Oranios in Greek, Shamaim in Hebrew. That's a plural word, heavens. And it's first used in God created the sun, the abode of the sun and the moon and the stars. That's the heavens. And then that same word where it talks about angels and associating angels with heaven uses the same word, Shamaim. So angels are literally among the sun and the moon and the stars, according to the Bible. It's there. So even Christians who are having a hard time saying, I think ETs are earthbound. They're not among the stars. They're just in another dimension and they're demons. Some, sure. Satan is the prince of the power of the air. He's in first heaven. I actually picture Earth as an onion, a multidimensional onion. This is what the Bible describes. First heaven is the sky. It's not just the sky. If you were to alter your frequency and go to a higher level of glory, you would find yourself, if me sitting in this chair, I'd find myself sitting inside either magma or solid rock, probably magma, because the Earth is a bigger planet in first heaven. And if I were to travel up until I get up, however big, I mean, Earth is really big, and I actually have dimensions described based on things in the Bible. But there's a whole nother planet that's much larger than the planet that we're on, and it's Earth, but it's a glorified world. It's much nicer, and Satan is in charge of it. But not all of it. There's regions. Michael, for example, the Archangel Michael, is said to be the protector over Israel. This whole structure is explained in the book of Daniel. When Daniel prayed, right? You get this picture, and Gabriel, when he reported him, the Archangel Gabriel reported to him, he described it. He says, I was coming from God's throne, right? So you can imagine him traveling through outer space, through the dimensions, traveling as he came. When he encountered Earth, he entered first heaven. He got stopped. He got delayed by the Prince of Persia, which is a fallen angel in charge of that area over Persia. But this happened before Persia was in power. So things were happening and changing in that first realm, in the first heaven first. And then our world is a mirror image of what goes on up there. When powers change over there, we have wars and everything, and then our boundaries get redistributed, and then things change down in our world, right? So he encountered the Prince of Persia, delayed him 21 days. He finally went through. Michael was there in that first heaven, reported over, and fought. They had a literal battle in first heaven. For all we know, some of that even could have spilled over into this dimension. They might have seen spaceships and stuff flying around. We don't know. And then then Gabriel came down. He finally reported to Daniel, and he gave him the prophecy that we have in the book of Daniel. And when he left, he didn't just disappear. In fact, when Jesus left, what did he do? He floated up. He didn't just disappear, right? He floated up. He had to go through the first heaven, and went
Right.
off to
Right.
God's throne, right? Why do we call heaven up? We associate heaven with up, right? That's why. It's because first heaven surrounds the earth. And Gabriel penetrated, he went from God's throne, third heaven, traveled through second heaven, outer space, multi dimensions, reached earth, hit first heaven, had to penetrate first heaven and come down to Daniel and meet Daniel. Talk with Daniel. And he said, when I leave, I have to go through there again. Well, why couldn't he go around? Because he penetrated and came down, right? He has to go back up and repenetrate the shell that he's in and fight his way back through to get back home. So that's your picture. First heaven, second heaven, outer space, third heaven, God's throne, where, most likely in the northern hemisphere, because the sides of the north is consistently associated with God's throne. And you talk about, okay, what would happen if Gabriel kept going down? Heaven or earth is a smaller earth in a lower dimension, in a lower, more cursed dimension. That's hell. The Bible literally says hell's in the heart of the earth. So how have you ever reconciled that? You have earth, and then they say hell's inside the earth, right? Well, wait a minute. You drill a hole, you find magma, lava, unless you believe hollow earth theory, but even the whole earth is not going to be hollow. There's, science behind that. You dig, you go down far enough, it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. And that's not hell. I mean, that's magma, right? How can you have a civilization in that? Solid magma, liquid magma. You can't have a civilization in that. However, if Earth is a smaller planet in a lower dimension with all kinds of places that are just burning torment, but it still gives you latitude to move around. And then you have the description of Lazarus and the rich man. There is a place down there where there's a chasm and there's spirits that are trapped. And in the Old Testament, there was even a place of paradise. So there's a nice place down there. There was until Jesus was crucified, and then he went down into the underworld. Onion theory, right? He went down
Okay.
to
Yeah.
get to this
Absolutely.
lower realm of existence in another dimension, but inside the earth, where Earth is probably a smaller planet. And in there, he released the spirits from that paradise part, and then he proclaimed victory to the spirits that were trapped in the torment part. And for all we know, he could have even preached to them too. And some of them might have had an opportunity, but we don't know. That I'm still a little bit foggy, but he did release the spirits trapped in the paradise part. And then that place got vacated, which leads me to think that maybe demons went and took over that. Because if they have the ability to come all the way to the surface and possess people, then why couldn't they go over there, go back down over there and take that over, and then use that as a place to launch this deceptive campaign that everybody goes to heaven when they die? So you have these people having these near-death experiences, and they perceive what they call heaven. But what do they describe it as? They describe it as a beautiful place, but they don't even mention the love of God. And you can't say that you've been to heaven when you don't experience that overwhelming, intoxicating glory of God loving you. That's the main thing that you remember about it. And yet I've read people's descriptions, these astral projectors and stuff, talking about, oh yeah, I went to this place. It was all this beautiful place. Oh, I saw waterfalls. I saw this. I saw that. Oh, you probably went to the paradise part. And I bet you it got inhabited by these fallen angels, either fallen angels that have the ability to go down there, and they're like in the first heaven, like Satan, Lucifer, right? He's in the first heaven. He's not in hell. A lot of people get puzzled. I thought the devil was in hell. No, he's a prince of the power of the air. Somehow he's evaded hell. How did he do that? It's because he tricked everybody else into crossing the line. He's the instigator. He's the one saying, hey, I bet you couldn't do that. You should do that. He convinces everybody else to do his dirty work, and he just goes up to the line, and God is like, you know what? You're my alternative. For everyone who rejects me, I'll let you continue to do that as long as you don't cross the line. You're
Yeah.
allowed to do it for people that are disobeying me. So there's this balancing act, and you actually read that in the book of Job. It's really heady and hard to conceive, right? Why can God actually uses the devil, but he uses him only in areas where we're like disobedient to God. The whole strong delusion that we read about in Second Thessalonians, and I wrote a book called The Strong Delusion, and it really covers this a lot. It's this balancing act of free will, where God allows Satan some access to do certain things. I mean, honestly, if Adam and Eve said, "Get lost, stupid snake," it would have been done. It would have been done. He would not have any power here. And then our whole planet
Thanks,
would have been
Andrew.
populated, and they would have started translating into angels, and they would have expanded into the cosmos and started populating the other planets out there like Lucifer's kingdom did. Honestly, what we see in the moon with the hollow moon theory and stuff like that you've heard about, what you see in Mars, all the structures and stuff on there, that's part of Satan's ancient kingdom. And it wasn't just Earth. And in fact, I've even read that the asteroid belt used to be a planet. It was called Astera, and that might have been one of his strongholds. And he had a whole civilization there, and that's how God blew up. God blew that planet up. It's called the failed accretion theory. How some scientists, but then there's also the theory that the exploded planet hypothesis. Richard Hoagland wrote about that, and so I talk about that in my book Aliens in the Bible. And I think that was a satanic stronghold, that the devil had a stronghold. Earth was his kingdom. This was his throne, but he expanded to the whole, all over the place. He walked amidst the stones of fire, not just this solar system. And he had, deceived 1/3 of the angels, roughly. And I kind of get that from Revelation. This dragon dragged 1/3 of the stars from the sky. What are those stars? Angels. Angels literally in the stars, amidst the stars. So it's all of this information. It's like literally telling you black and white what I'm talking about in Scripture, but everybody symbolizes it to death, and then they lose the meaning.
Right, and
these clues of what it means, they're everywhere. And that first time when I started reading the Bible, I mean, Jesus visited me in that dream. I woke up. Who was that? And I asked, and I heard his name, and and I woke up, and I'm like, okay, I'm a Christian now. What do I do? What do Christians do? And I was dithering, right? I'm walking around my room. I'm ripping posters off the wall. No, that's not good. That's not good. I mean, like seeing things for the first time, right? Sin, like, gosh, my room is a throne of sin. Ripping stuff and throwing things away left and right. And then I'm like, I got a Bible around here. I know Christians read the Bible. I got to read the Bible. I need to find a church. I got to get baptized. I'm just making this list, right? I'm dithering and freaking out. And I finally find a Bible, and I'm like, okay, let me read this. I start reading Genesis, and very beginning, chapter 6, I'm reading about the flood of Noah. And I'm like, wait a minute. I remember Grandma talking about David and Goliath, but I never asked where these giants came from. This is where they came from? This is crazy. This is the most paranormal book I've ever read. And then I realized,
absolutely.
Then I realized, I know what this is. These Nephilim. I know what it is. This is otherworldly beings. These fallen angels. They're bad guys. They're ET bad guys, and they came and mated with us, and they created these angels. And how else could they mate? If for the longest time, I thought angel, spiritual, like most of these Christian thoughts, the angel is a non-physical. No, they're physical. They can do non-physical things. Their bodies are glorified. They can walk through walls. They can fly. They just change the vibrational frequency of their atoms to do it, right? And we get this impression that they're not physical, but they are very physical. They're, in fact, more physical than us. And they have to change their frequency to come down here and be in this realm. Probably for them, it's kind of like for us, it would be like holding your breath and jumping in your pool and swimming underwater, right? It's not your natural environment. You don't feel comfortable there. You can only stay there for a little while. It may take some skill and some energy to be sustained down there for a while. So for the angels to come here, they have to do some kind of version of that. It may take some juice on their part, or maybe they have some kind of technology. But all these things that differentiate angels from aliens. Without thinking, I'm starting to enumerate a list, right? Okay, angels. I can't think of an angel. Why would an angel need technology? They got God's power, right? Wait a minute. Angels use chariots. Why do angels use chariots? Now, okay, that's a question. Let's put this over here. Well, wait a minute. Their chariots are not normal. Their chariots fly. Would an angelic chariot have wheels? Why would it have? What's the point of a wheel?
It doesn't need them.
It's held by gravity, right? It's pushed down. The wheel helps it push forward, makes it easier. But if it's floating, why would it have wheels? So it probably doesn't have wheels. And what's moving it? Is it a horse? Wait a minute. It's floating. If it has the power to float, it probably has the power to move, right? Because it has to defy gravity to float. And then plus, if it's a magical horse that's pulling it, why isn't the chariot dangling underneath it? What's keeping this chain? What's our mentality here on this? Are they getting sprinkled with angel dust like Santa's reindeer? Is that our mentality here? Or are we going to apply some common sense here? This is angelic technology. This is a vehicle for otherworldly beings. It has to be. And then, of course, you read Ezekiel chapter 1 and 10. I mean, he literally even mentions the kind of metal that's on the bottom, beryllium, right? What is beryllium used for? Rocket nozzles. It's a heat-resistant metal. The shape of a saucer, it's a wheel within a wheel. Then the wings, they connect at the ends. How can the wings connect at the end? How can you? Well, wait a minute. What if it's the top part of the paneling of a saucer connected to the bottom part? So if all you've ever seen fly was a bird, then you're going to think, okay, it's got wings, but these wings are different. These wings, they don't flap. So it actually says the wings don't move, right? They're like fixed. So a set of wings like that, and another set of wings like that are connecting to it somehow. Well, that forms the shape of a saucer, and then when you turn it sideways, it's round. It's like a wheel, and it's got these lights, series of lights that are wheels within wheels. I actually read a dissertation on that, and it was very good, but described it point by point. And then of course the dome on top, which I speculate, the Merkaba, right? God's glory over the top of this, right? So it says that there's a crystal dome on top. That's just like the thing that my grandmother saw, right? The UFO with a typical transparent dome on top where the things can see through it, right? And but there seemed to be some kind of portal there where he's looking through to God's throne. Well, what by its very nature is any intergalactic transdimensional vehicle going to be capable of doing? Opening up a portal. These things aren't these things aren't manually traveling like with traditional propulsion. No, they warp gravity, and they say this spot way over here on this side of the solar system or universe and this side over here, let's just pull them together with intense gravity and then make this spot right here so you can look right through into heaven and see God's portal right there, opened right up above it. That's your angelic chariot. Let's bring God's presence with us directly wherever we go and through all creation.
So
absolutely,
it would be entirely possible to just take this where we're at now and go all the way back to the beginning of this fascination that you have, as a 5-year-old kid listening to your grandma talk about what she saw, that what she witnessed when this ET structure blew by was angelic and sent or shown to her because of her undying faith in
she saw Jesus too. She saw both sides of this. And and the funny thing is my grandmother never felt any need to reconcile this, right? She's just like, okay, they're both real. Just God created them too.
Right. So I love that, as that was like just to kind of like bring it back to where this interview started. I love that as an ending point, just for that synchronicity of, the whole conversation itself, how we were able to just kind of get to that point, and then suddenly here we are back to back to where we started. I think that
Yeah.
that's actually a
We-
really good ending point. And
Nice bookend.
I have a I've
John,
actually
we have 2 hours of intense conversation with you. This is the longest
I have
interview.
I have
I
trouble
don't mean
believing
that
that you're
negatively.
not like ordained in a ministry somewhere, because you speak so passionately about this stuff that I just sat here and I just listened and I absorbed it. And what I want is I want everybody listening to check your stuff out. So I want to give you the opportunity to promote everything that you have, be it your website, your books, any type of events or upcoming shows. Uh,
Yeah.
the floor is yours to just go ahead and advertise and promote.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's why I chose my name right there. That's my website, my main website. I do have a couple of other websites named after the books, thestrongdelusion.net. Uh, and really, my main passion is to let people know that there's big things coming. You look at what's going on. There's so many signs of the times. We're in the end times. We've been in the end times since Jesus, right? But and then God says He's going to be here soon, and so we just always think that soon in the biblical sense that could be thousands more years, right? But honestly, I don't think it's thousands, and everything's looking like this is going to be our lifetime when Jesus returns, which also means it's in our lifetime when the Antichrist comes and all of these deceptions coming. And Jesus literally said, as the days of Noah were, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. That was a prophecy that we're returning to the days of Noah. And what was I talking about all this time? The days of Noah that opened this all up to me. That, I'm reading about these angelic beings interfacing with humanity, right? And Jesus said we're going to return to that. He picked all of history he could have picked. He chose Noah's time when angels were interfacing with human contact, right? So that's where we're at. And this was all opened up to me. My grandmother kind of just handed me this mantle and said, no, I didn't want to mess with it. You do something with it. And I feel like I've kind of put these things together, right? In that book, ChristianUFOlogy.net, thestrongdelusion.net, those are websites for those books. And if somebody can't afford it, just email me. All I ask for is just maybe give a review for me on Amazon, and I'll email you a PDF of the book.
Oh, wow,
So,
there you go. So that's
it's years of research. I've been researching this. I wrote my first article and put it on the internet when the internet was barely coming into existence in 1995. So I've been researching this a long, long time. And my latest book, Christian UFOlogy, is the second edition to Aliens and the Antichrist. So the Strong Delusion contains some of that, but it also contains this whole other branch of research where Islam comes into the picture. And I don't know if you've heard of the book by Joel Richardson, The Islamic Antichrist.
Yeah.
That book contains that research, which I got permission from the author. It contains some of that research, and then I built on it and then added this whole otherworldly stuff. There's things that I talk about in that book that honestly scared people, and they didn't want to interview me because of what I what I reveal in that book regarding Islam, and it's just wow. I actually read the Quran and the Hadiths, and then I found all these things in there. I mean, there's things that I haven't heard anybody talk about because they're afraid, right? For example, did you know that the Quran actually talks about Muhammad being operated on with heart surgery by the Archangel Gabriel? Cut open his heart, did heart surgery, put it back in, right? So you think, oh, it's just some symbolic account. No, it goes further. It says a group of kids actually saw this happening and freaked out and screamed and ran and told their parents. And when they came back, they found Muhammad with stitches on his chest. Does that sound like symbology? That's something that happened to him. So that book brings out all of this research about otherworldly things in the Quran and in the Hadiths and stuff. And the jinn, this whole mythology about the jinn, those are Nephilim. I did this huge thing, here's what the jinn are, here's what the Nephilim are, and They match. And then, of course, that book brings it all together. Here's how Islam fits. Here's how Christianity fits. Here's how this otherworldly stuff comes into the picture. I mean, it's all there. But the big thing too, which I come back with Christian UFOlogy, is these people in government and stuff. They're seeing all these UAPs and stuff. That's a fulfillment of prophecy. That's Noah. That's Noah's day returning now, return of the Nephilim, and we're seeing it now with all of these UAPs and stuff. And now our government isn't singing the tune of, oh, it's swamp gas, it's whatever. No, now they're saying we don't know what it is. That's their first explanation, but they're warming up to it. They're eventually going to say, okay, it's real. Cat's out of the bag. There's a base on the moon. There's a base on Mars. We got a space program. The whole thing about this intergalactic space program, like the Federation, I don't think that there's this time traveling thing that I've heard about where people get into this space federation and it's in the future and then their time regress back. I don't think that's true. But I do believe that there's a lot more than our government is telling us, that we do have actual contractual agreements with these things, because that kind of stuff is in the Bible. It even tells you in Daniel that in the end times, there's going to be battles where beings from the heavens are going to be interfacing with us. We're going to be doing battles with otherworldly forces. And when the Antichrist takes over, he's going to have otherworldly alliances. So you're talking about governments that are aligned. They have alliances with these things that are beyond this world. That's what we're seeing now. China probably has some of this otherworldly technology. They got off the moon, and they have their alliances. Germany during World War II, stuff that they were coming up with, they had otherworldly connections, and then we got some of that from them. Some of their technology and stuff, and we got our Roswell. Russia has their, so not only are we reverse engineering and we got all this technology stuff and these international corporations that are hoarding this otherworldly technology. We talked to Stephen Greer about that. All that's going on, but all of that is a fulfillment of prophecy, and that's the whole point of my books. I want people to know about this. I want Christians to see this. I don't want them to have the rug pulled out from under them. I don't want that Independence Day moment coming where they walk out to get their newspaper and see a ship in the sky, and then everything that they thought they believed in with the Bible and Jesus and all of that is suddenly they think it's thrown out the
blown
window.
asunder, right?
Yeah. No, we don't want that.
I mean, John, thank you for joining us tonight. I mean, like we've had 2 hours of conversation here that I think is just beyond anything that we've ever done so far, and your topics are beyond interesting. So I would appreciate if everybody could check out johnmilor.com, check out his books. Definitely worth checking out. Drew, I think here from us as Sasquatchers, we're very appreciative too. And what do we always say?
Thanks for squatching.
Thanks for squatching. Squatch you later. Yeah, so we didn't tell him. We have to tell him ahead of time.
Yeah, that's part of the gag there, I guess.
Yeah, sorry.
That's awesome.
We always end the show with our silly little catchphrases, and you got lucky there because we didn't make you do it. Everybody else has had to.
Hey, I'll do it. Thanks for Sasquatching, man.
Yeah, thanks for squatching. Squatch you later.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for squatching. Got to get it right.
Squatching. johnmilor.com.
Thank you.